On her wedding day, she walks beautifully down the aisle. He, the best man, watches her at the altar, but a devastating betrayal is revealed. The groom is unfaithful, and Sophia's humiliation is public. Amidst the chaos, Dominic witnesses Sophia's raw pain. Driven by justice and compassion, he kneels beside her and makes her a promise. "Sophia, I won't let you face this alone. I promise I'll take care of you. I will never betray you." Prepare for a twist where a best man's promise turns into true. Love and society, enemies and the past will try to destroy the fragile peace they try to build. But passion and loyalty can heal broken hearts and prove that the truest love is the one that arises from the ruins. Watch this story to the end. You'll be amazed. If you like love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. Sophia Carter adjusted her veil for the 10th time in those last few minutes, gazing at her reflection in the mirror of the St. Patrick's Cathedral vestry. At 29, she never imagined she'd reach the altar with her heart so full of hope and love. The French lace dress hugged her delicate curves, and her brown eyes sparkled with a genuine happiness that captivated everyone around her. "You look stunning, sis," whispered Emily, her younger sister, as she arranged the flowers in the bouquet. "Brandon is one lucky guy." Sophia smiled, feeling a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. 3 years of dating, 2 engaged. Brandon Miller had been her anchor during the toughest times, especially when she lost her job at the publishing house and had to start over as a private literature tutor. He'd always been there, with words of encouragement and promises of a bright future together. Across town, Dominic Albright adjusted the cuffs of his Italian shirt while overlooking Manhattan from his office on the 40th floor. At 40, he commanded one of the largest tech conglomerates in the country. But at that moment, his mind was focused on one thing: being Brandon Miller's best man. His friendship with Brandon dated back to college, although their paths had diverged drastically. While Dominic built his business empire with iron determination, Brandon had opted for corporate law, always benefiting indirectly from the contacts and opportunities that proximity to Dominic provided. "Mr. Albright, the driver is waiting," his secretary informed him through the intercom. Dominic nodded, locking the documents in his drawer. There was something about Brandon that bothered him lately. A subtle falseness, a tendency to lie about small things. But he had been his friend for 20 years, and Dominic always valued loyalty above all else. St. Patrick's Cathedral was packed when Dominic arrived. White and pink flowers adorned every corner, and the expectant murmur of the guests filled the air. He greeted a few acquaintances and headed to the altar, where he found Brandon visibly nervous. "Relax, man," Dominic said, straightening his friend's tie. "It's just the most important day of your life." Brandon forced a smile, but his eyes avoided direct contact. "Thanks for being here, Dom. Means a lot." At that moment, the church doors opened and the wedding march echoed through the space. Sophia appeared at the end of the aisle, radiant, walking slowly beside her father. Dominic felt something stir in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. He couldn't take his eyes off that woman who radiated a pure and genuine light. Sophia advanced with measured steps, her smile illuminating every face she encountered along the way. When her eyes met Brandon's at the altar, her heart skipped a beat. But inexplicably, it was the intense gaze of the tall man beside the groom that made her hesitate for a fraction of a second. Dominic Albright was even more imposing in person than in the photos Brandon had shown. Dark hair with a few silver strands at the temples, piercing blue eyes, and a presence that commanded respect. The priest began the ceremony with the traditional words, and everything seemed to follow the perfect script Sophia had dreamed of. The vows were exchanged, the rings presented. But when it came time for the final declarations, something unexpected happened. Brandon's cell phone, which should have been turned off, began to vibrate insistently in his pocket. The sound echoed through the microphone that captured the vows. Some people laughed nervously, thinking it was an embarrassing but common accident. Brandon tried to ignore it, but the vibration continued. Finally, he took the device out of his pocket to turn it off, but in the brusque movement, the cell phone slipped from his sweaty hands, falling onto the marble floor. The screen lit up automatically, projecting a message that was visible to everyone present in the first few rows. "Love you, Brandon. Can't wait for us to be together after you get rid of her. E." The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia read the message, and the world seemed to crumble around her. The E could only mean one thing: Emily, her sister, her maid of honor, who was there just a few feet away, her face as pale as paper. The murmurs started low and spread like wildfire through the church. Sophia felt her legs weaken, but she remained standing, paralyzed by pain and humiliation. Brandon tried to pick up the phone, stammering incoherent apologies, but it was too late. Dominic watched everything with a mixture of shock and fury. Brandon's betrayal wasn't just of Sophia, it was of all the values that he, Dominic, considered sacred. He saw the raw pain in Sophia's eyes, the dignity with which she tried to process what she had just discovered, and something within him broke and recomposed simultaneously. At dinner, chaos erupted in St. Patrick's Cathedral. Guests rose from their seats, whispers turned into loud conversations, and cell phone flashes began to capture every moment of Sophia's public humiliation. She remained motionless at the altar, the bouquet trembling in her hands, while Brandon desperately tried to explain the unexplainable. "Sophia, I can explain. It's not what it looks like," he shouted, but his words rang hollow even to his own ears. Emily had disappeared through the back of the church, leaving only the echo of her high heels on the marble. Sophia's mother was crying in her father's arms, who glared at Brandon with a contained fury that promised consequences. It was then that Dominic acted. Without a second thought, he approached Sophia, who remained petrified amidst the turmoil. With careful movements as if she were made of crystal, he gently placed his hand on her arm. "Sophia," his deep voice said, cutting through the noise around them. "You don't have to stay here." She looked up at him, and Dominic felt as if he were looking directly into someone's soul. There was pain, yes, but also a quiet strength that impressed him. Without a word, she nodded. Dominic turned to Brandon, who was still stammering apologies. "You're a disgrace," he said with a coldness that made several guests around them recoil. "And you're no longer my friend." With natural authority, Dominic guided Sophia through the crowd that parted before them. Some reporters who had arrived, drawn by the commotion, tried to ask questions, but a single look from Dominic was enough to silence them. He led her to his black Mercedes, where the driver was already waiting. During the silent drive to Dominic's mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, Sophia finally spoke. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." "I know enough," he replied, observing her delicate profile reflected in the window. "I saw how you maintained your dignity when anyone else would have fallen apart. That says more about your character than years of acquaintance." Sophia felt something stir in her chest, a gratitude mixed with an unexpected attraction to this man who had appeared like a guardian angel in the darkest moment of her life. But she immediately scolded herself. How could she be thinking about another man when she had just been betrayed at the altar? Dominic's mansion was impressive, a modern three-story structure surrounded by impeccable lawns. Sophia felt even smaller amidst such luxury, remembering her own financial struggles and the modest apartment she shared with Emily in Queens. "You can stay as long as you need," Dominic said, leading her to an elegant guest room. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Rodriguez, will take care of anything you need." "I can't accept," Sophia protested, even knowing she had nowhere else to go. Her parents' house was too small, and returning to the apartment meant facing Emily, if she was even still there. "You can and you will," Dominic replied with a firmness that brooked no argument. "Consider it a favor you're doing me. I hate to see injustice being done, and letting you face this alone would be the greatest injustice of all." In the weeks that followed, a strange routine settled in. Sophia spent her days in the mansion's library, reading or trying to write, while Dominic worked in his office. They met only at dinner, sharing silent meals that gradually turned into cautious conversations. Dominic discovered that Sophia was more intelligent and insightful than he had imagined. She had strong opinions about literature, politics, and life, expressed with a passion he had long lost. Sophia, in turn, began to see beyond the facade of the ruthless businessman. She noticed how he treated his employees with respect, how he genuinely cared about philanthropic projects, and how a deep melancholy sometimes flickered in his blue eyes. But the tension between them was palpable. Dominic found himself watching Sophia read in the library, admiring the concentration that delicately furrowed her brow. Sophia felt her heart race when he came home, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the hall. Both struggled against an attraction that seemed inappropriate given the circumstances. The first obstacle appeared in the form of Eleanor Albright, Dominic's mother. An elegant and imperious woman, she arrived unannounced on a Thursday afternoon, finding Sophia in the living room. "So you're the famous runaway bride," Eleanor said, examining Sophia from head to toe. "Dominic has always had a tendency to take in strays, but this is going too far." "Mom," Dominic's voice sounded threatening as he appeared in the doorway. "Sophia is my guest." "And she's causing a terrible scandal," Eleanor retorted. "The newspapers are speculating about you two. This could ruin your reputation, Dominic. And what will Adriana think?" Sophia felt her stomach clench. "Adriana?" "Adriana Vanderbilt," Eleanor explained with a satisfied smile. "Senator Vanderbilt's daughter. She and Dominic have had an understanding for months, an engagement that would greatly benefit the family business." The silence that followed was tense. Dominic looked at Sophia and saw the pain reappear in her eyes. Not the pain of Brandon's betrayal, but something new and deeper. The realization that perhaps she was just another charity case for him. "I'll pack my bags," Sophia said softly, standing up. "No," the word came out more aggressively than Dominic intended. "You're not going anywhere." But Sophia had already left the room, leaving Dominic facing his mother's triumphant gaze. For the first time in years, he found himself torn between family expectations and something he couldn't name, but knew was related to the woman who had brought light to his dark mansion. That night, as Sophia discreetly tried to pack her few belongings, she heard a soft knock on the door. It was Dominic, holding an envelope. "This came for you today," he said, handing her the correspondence. "It's from Brandon's law firm." Sophia took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, there were divorce papers, or rather, annulment. Papers for the marriage that never happened, and a letter. The handwriting was Brandon's. "Sophia, I need you to sign these papers quickly. The situation is complicated, and you need to disappear for a while. There are things you don't understand, and the less you know, the better for you. Don't try to contact me. B." Dominic watched Sophia's face pale as she read. "What does it say?" She handed him the letter, and when he finished reading, his blue eyes were icy with fury. "He's threatening you." "It's not exactly a threat," Sophia murmured, but even she knew there was something sinister in Brandon's urgency. "It is exactly a threat," Dominic insisted. "And now I want to know what things you supposedly don't understand." Sophia looked at him, seeing a determination that wasn't there before. Without realizing it, Brandon's letter had created something that neither she nor Dominic expected, a reason to fight together, a common cause that would force them to get even closer, regardless of the social obstacles that stood between them. The investigation into Brandon's veiled threats brought Dominic and Sophia closer than either had anticipated. For 3 consecutive days, they pored over documents, contracts, and records that Dominic managed to obtain through his contacts in the corporate world. "Look at this," Sophia said, pointing to a series of bank transfers on an account statement they had managed to get. Brandon moved a huge sum of money 3 weeks before the wedding. Where did it go? Money. Dominic leaned over the paper, getting so close that Sophia could smell his masculine cologne mixed with the scent of coffee. The proximity made her lose focus momentarily, and he noticed the effect he had on her. "Looks like an offshore account," he murmured, forcing himself to maintain concentration on the numbers. But why would Brandon need to hide money? During the long hours working together in the library, sharing impromptu meals and discussing theories, the barriers between them began to dissolve. Sophia discovered that Dominic had a sarcastic sense of humor that he rarely showed, and that his hands were surprisingly gentle when he handed her a cup of tea or organized the scattered papers. Dominic, in turn, was fascinated by Sophia's sharp intelligence, by the way. She connected dots he had missed, and by the way, her eyes lit up when she discovered something important. More than once, he caught himself watching the movement of her lips as she spoke, wondering what it would be like to kiss them. "You're very quiet," Sophia observed during dinner on Wednesday. "Did you find something worrying?" Dominic hesitated, swirling the red wine in his glass. "I found something about Brandon that you might prefer not to know." "After everything that's happened, I think I can handle anything," she replied, although her voice betrayed a slight insecurity. "He was being investigated by the IRS. Large-scale tax evasion through shell companies." Dominic paused. "Companies that used other people's names as fronts." Sophia felt her blood run cold. "Other people like who?" "Like you, Sophia. Your name appears as a partner in 3 companies that never actually existed, companies that moved millions in the last 2 years. The silence that followed was broken only by the clinking of the glass trembling in Sophia's hand. "He used me," she whispered. "All this time he used me as a front for financial crimes." Dominic stood up and walked around the table, kneeling beside her chair. "He can't hurt you anymore, Sophia. I won't allow it." When she raised her teary eyes to him, something changed irrevocably between them. Dominic raised his hand and gently touched her face, wiping away a tear that was rolling down. The intimate gesture made Sophia shiver, and for a moment, both were paralyzed by the intensity of the connection. "Why do you care so much about me?" she asked in a whisper. The simple question hit Dominic like a punch to the stomach. For a moment, he saw again the face of Isabel, his ex-fiancée, on the last night they spent together 5 years ago. The same question, but a completely different answer. "Because you're real," he said finally. "In a world full of fake people, you're genuine, and that's rarer than you imagine." Sophia felt her heart race. His proximity, the warmth of his hand on her face, the intensity of his blue eyes, everything conspired to make her forget that she was there only as a refugee from a scandal. "Dominic," she began, but was interrupted by the intercom. "Mr. Albright," Mrs. Rodriguez's voice sounded worried. "There's a reporter at the door. He says he has information about the IRS investigation." The magic of the moment broke instantly. Dominic stepped back, returning to businessman mode, and Sophia felt the cold of his absence. "Send him away," Dominic ordered through the intercom. "He said that if you don't talk to him, he's going to publish an article tomorrow saying that you're protecting a criminal, and he mentioned Ms. Sophia's name specifically." Sophia stood up abruptly from the chair. "I need to leave here. My presence is ruining your life, Dominic. Your mother was right." "No," he said firmly, but there was a new tension in his voice. "No one is going to kick you out of here. I take care of my commitments." The word commitment sounded strange, almost cold, and Sophia felt a pang of hurt. Was that what she was to him? Just another commitment to be honored? That night, alone in her room, Sophia heard Dominic talking on the phone in his office. His voice was tense, controlled, but she managed to catch a few words through the wall. Reputation, family, can't afford to. She wondered if she had misinterpreted the signs, if the tenderness she saw in his eyes was just compassion, not desire. Maybe Dominic was simply a good man, fulfilling a promise made in a moment of emotion. But on the other side of the wall, Dominic was having the most difficult conversation of his life with his image consultant. The man had been clear. Publicly associating with Sophia at that moment could destroy deals that had taken decades to build, especially with the elections approaching and several government contracts at stake. "I understand your humanitarian position, Dominic," the consultant was saying, "but you need to think about the bigger picture. Your company employs thousands of people. You can help her in other, more discreet ways." When he hung up the phone, Dominic rested his head in his hands. For the first time in his adult life, he found himself torn between the logic of business and something much deeper and more disturbing. What he didn't know was that, on the other side of town, Brandon was having a much more sinister conversation with people whose names Sophia could never imagine. People who saw the growing closeness between Dominic and Sophia as a threat to their own plans. "She knows too much," said a voice on the phone line. "And Albright has too many resources to investigate. We need to separate them." "How?" asked Brandon nervously. "Leave that to us, but you're going to need to convince Sophia to sign some additional documents, and it has to be quick." Meanwhile, in the silent mansion, neither Dominic nor Sophia imagined that the real danger was yet to come, and that the growing feelings between them would be both their salvation and their greatest vulnerability. The storm arrived without a warning in the early hours of Friday morning. Sophia woke up to the sound of thunder and rain lashing violently against the windows. It was 3 a.m. when she heard hurried footsteps in the hallway and then urgent knocking on her door. "Sophia!" Dominic's voice sounded tense. "I need you to get dressed quickly. We have to leave." She opened the door, still sleepy, wearing only a silk nightgown. Dominic was fully dressed, his hair damp and an expression of urgency that she had never seen before. "What happened? Someone broke into my office tonight? They took all the documents we were analyzing about Brandon," he said, avoiding looking directly at her in the nightgown. "But the worst part is they left a message. For you." Sophia felt her blood run cold. What kind of message? Dominic handed her a folded piece of paper, with letters cut out from a magazine. Like in the movies, the message was clear and terrifying. Curious Sophia needs to stop asking questions. Next time, it won't just be documents that disappear. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hands trembling. "Put on something warm. We're going to my cabin upstate. We'll be safe there while I arrange proper protection for you." During the drive through the torrential rain, the silence in the car was thick. Sophia watched Dominic's tense profile as he drove, his hands firm on the wheel despite the gravity of the situation. She felt guilty for bringing danger into his life, but also strangely protected by the determination with which he had assumed her safety. The cabin was a rustic chic retreat, hidden among pine trees, with a stone fireplace and windows that offered a view of a misty valley. Dominic lit the fire while Sophia warmed herself with a blanket, still processing the reality that someone had threatened her life. "Who could want to hurt me?" she asked, watching the flames dance. "People who have a lot to lose if you discover the truth about Brandon's activities," Dominic replied, pouring 2 glasses of brandy. "And apparently they're dangerous people." It was then that Sophia's phone rang. Brandon. Dominic signaled for her to answer, but activated the speakerphone. Her ex-fiancé's voice sounded different, colder, more calculating. "Sophia, I need you to meet me tomorrow, alone." "I'm not going anywhere with you, Brandon." "Yes, you are." The coldness in his voice increased. "Because if you don't come, I'm going to send all the newspapers the photos I have of you and Dominic together in the last few days. Very intimate photos." Sophia looked at Dominic, confused. "What photos? They don't have to be real, sweetheart. Technology is a wonderful thing. Imagine the scandal, the betrayed bride consoling herself with her ex-fiancé's best friend. Both your reputations would be destroyed." Dominic's blood boiled. "You're a coward, Brandon." "Ah, Dominic's there too. Perfect." Brandon's voice dripped with venom. "You've always had it easy, haven't you? Money, power, respect. Now you're going to find out what it's like to lose everything because of a woman." "What do you want?" asked Sophia, trying to keep her voice steady. "I want you to sign some papers transferring your share of the companies to me. And I want Dominic to stop investigating my business. In return, you're free to live your romance in peace." Dominic approached the phone. "And if we refuse?" "Then tomorrow morning the newspapers will receive not only the photos, but also documents, proving that Sophia was aware of the financial schemes all along. She'll go to prison, and you, Dominic, will be known as the man who chose a criminal over his family and his business." The silence that followed was broken only by the crackling of the fireplace. Sophia felt cornered like a wounded animal. Dominic, in turn, was calculating options, but all seemed to lead to the destruction of one of them. "We have until 6 tomorrow evening," Brandon continued. "The meeting will be at the abandoned warehouse on Industrial Avenue, 847. Sophia comes, alone, signs the papers, and everyone's happy." The call ended, leaving them in a silence laden with tension and fear. "I'll go," Sophia said finally. "I can't let your life be ruined because of me." "Don't even think about it," Dominic replied, his voice charged with an emotion he could no longer hide. "I've already lost important people because I didn't fight for them. I'm not going to make the same mistake." Sophia looked at him, surprised by the intensity in his words. "What people?" Dominic hesitated, but the gravity of the situation seemed to break down his usual defenses. "Isabel, my ex-fiancée. 5 years ago, when family pressures and financial blackmail threatened our relationship, I chose business. I thought I was being rational, protecting the family empire." He paused, his eyes fixed on the fire. "She died in a car accident 3 months later. I never forgave myself for not fighting for her." Sophia's heart clenched at seeing the genuine pain in his eyes. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand. "Dominic!" He turned to her, and for the first time, his defenses were completely down. "I can't lose you too, Sophia. I can't." The confession hung between them like a bridge that could no longer be uncrossed. Sophia saw in his eyes not only the generous protector, but a man in love and terrified by the possibility of another loss. "You don't love me," she said softly. "You just feel responsible for me." "You're wrong," he replied, moving closer until she could feel the heat of his body. "I fell in love with you the moment I saw your courage at the altar. Every day since then has only confirmed what I already knew." Before Sophia could answer, he kissed her. It was a desperate kiss, laden with weeks of repressed tension, fear of the future, and the certainty that it might be the last chance it would have. Sophia responded with equal intensity, momentarily forgetting the dangers that surrounded them. When they broke apart, both knew they had crossed an irreversible line. They were no longer just protector and protected. They were two hearts that had found each other amidst the chaos. "Now I understand why Brandon wants us separated," Sophia whispered against his lips. "Together, we're dangerous to him." "Then, let's show him exactly how dangerous we can be," Dominic replied, sealing both their fates with another kiss. Outside, the storm continued, but inside the cabin, two souls had found refuge in each other, unaware that the consequences of that night would change their lives forever, and that even more dangerous forces were already moving to separate them definitively. The dawn brought more than light to the cabin. It brought the raw reality of what had happened between Dominic and Sophia during the early hours. They had spent the night talking, planning, and gradually giving in to the attraction they could no longer deny. When the first rays of sun came through the window, they found them asleep on the sofa. She nestled in his arms. Sophia woke up first, watching Dominic's relaxed face in his sleep. The stubble, the disheveled hair, the serene expression. He looked younger, more vulnerable. For a moment, she allowed herself to dream of a normal life, where they could wake up like this every day. "Good morning," he murmured, opening his eyes and finding her watching him. "Good morning," she replied, blushing slightly. The intimacy of the night before hung between them. It hadn't been sexual but emotional, and in some ways that was even more intimate. The moment was interrupted by the insistent ringing of Dominic's cell phone. It was his secretary, and the urgency in her voice was immediately perceptible. "Mr. Albright, you need to return to New York immediately. The situation has blown up." During the drive back, Dominic tried to prepare Sophia for what they would find. Eleanor, his mother, had discovered where they were through the car's GPS tracking. Worse still, she had taken the information directly to Adriana Vanderbilt and her father, the senator. "They're furious," the secretary explained over the speakerphone. "The Vanderbilt family is threatening to break all political contracts if you don't immediately break things off with Ms. Sophia." Sophia felt her stomach clench. "Dominic, maybe it's better if I just disappear. Go to another state. Change my name." "Don't even think about it," he replied. But there was a new tension in his voice that he couldn't completely hide. When they arrived at the mansion, a veritable task force awaited them. Eleanor Albright was in the living room next to Adriana Vanderbilt, an impeccably dressed blonde woman of about 30, looking as if she had stepped out of a fashion magazine. Beside her, Senator Vanderbilt watched everything with calculating eyes. "Finally," said Eleanor when they entered. "I hope you had fun playing runaways while your reputation was being shredded, Dominic." Adriana stood up gracefully, extending her hand to Sophia with an icy smile. "You must be Sophia. I've heard so much about you." "I imagine you have," Sophia replied, maintaining her composure despite the obvious discomfort. Senator Vanderbilt got straight to the point. "Mr. Albright, we have a problem. My daughter and you had an agreement, unofficial, but an agreement nonetheless. Now I find out that you're harboring a suspected financial criminal, and, from what I'm told, developing feelings for her." "Sophia is not suspected of anything," Dominic said firmly. "She was the victim of manipulation." "That doesn't matter to public opinion," the senator retorted, "and it definitely doesn't matter to my constituents. I can't associate with scandals." It was then that Adriana played her cruelest card. "Dominic, darling, I really wish we could resolve this in a civilized manner." She opened a folder and spread photographs on the coffee table. "But it seems you two have been careless." Sophia felt her blood run cold as she saw the images. They were photos of her and Dominic at the cabin, taken through the windows during the early hours. The angles were carefully chosen to suggest physical intimacy, although nothing truly compromising had happened. "How did you get these photos?" asked Dominic, his voice dangerously low. "That doesn't matter," said Eleanor. "What matters is that they exist, and tomorrow morning they'll be in all the newspapers, unless we take action." Senator Vanderbilt leaned forward. "Here's our proposal. Sophia disappears immediately. You, Dominic, announce your engagement to Adriana this week. The photos never see the light of day, and everyone's happy." "And if I refuse?" asked Dominic, although he already knew the answer. "Then tomorrow, you'll wake up being the married man who abandoned his wife to get involved with a criminal," Adriana replied coldly. "Your government contracts will be cancelled. Your shareholders will demand your resignation, and the company that took decades to build will crumble in weeks." Sophia felt nauseous. It was all an elaborate trap. Brandon, the threats, even the refuge in the cabin. Someone had orchestrated every move to arrive at exactly that moment. "You have 24 hours to decide," said the senator, rising. "Adriana is a patient woman, but my campaign can't wait indefinitely." After they left, Eleanor approached Sophia. "My dear, you seem to be a decent young woman, but you need to understand that you're destroying my son's future. Dominic has built an empire. Don't let him throw it all away for a romantic whim." "It's not a whim," Sophia said softly but firmly, "and the decision is his, not mine." Eleanor smiled, but it was a smile without warmth. "You're right. It's his, but you can influence that decision. You can save him from himself." When they were finally alone, Dominic and Sophia looked at each other in silence. The weight of the threats hung between them like a toxic cloud. "Sophia," he began. "Don't," she interrupted him. "Don't say anything yet. We need to think clearly." But even as she spoke, Sophia already knew what her decision would be. She saw the pain in Dominic's eyes, the same pain he had described when talking about Isabel. He was torn between love and responsibility, between his heart and reason. That night, alone in her room, Sophia made a call that would change everything. "Brandon, it's me. I accept your conditions, but I want one thing in return." "All right. What do you want?" "I want you to leave Dominic completely out of this. The photos, the threats, everything. He can't be harmed in any way." Brandon laughed on the other end of the line. "You really fell for the rich guy, didn't you? Fine. If you sign the papers tomorrow and disappear from his life forever, I guarantee that Dominic Albright will never hear from you or this matter again. Promise?" "I promise. But Sophia, if you try to trick me, or if Dominic comes after you, the deal is off. And then not even I can control what will happen." When she hung up the phone, Sophia knew that she had just signed her own emotional death warrant, but she also knew that it was the only way to save the man she loved, even if it meant losing him forever. On the other side of the wall, Dominic had overheard part of the conversation, his fists clenched with anger and determination. He was also making plans, and he had no intention of letting Sophia sacrifice herself for him. The final battle was about to begin, and neither knew that the true enemy was yet to be revealed. Monday morning dawned gray over New York, as if the sky reflected what was to come. Sophia woke up before dawn, knowing that it would be the last day she would spend in Dominic's mansion. She had made her decision during the sleepless hours. She would meet Brandon, sign the papers, and disappear from Dominic's life before he could stop her. Dominic hadn't slept either. He had been in his office since 4 in the morning, making calls to lawyers, private investigators, and political contacts, trying to find a way out that would save both Sophia and his business empire. But each conversation confirmed what he already knew. They were cornered. At 10 in the morning, the first blow came through a call from his CFO. "Dominic, you need to see the papers. Now." Sophia was in the library when she heard Dominic curse. In his office, she ran there and found him with 3 newspapers spread on the table, his face pale with fury. "Oh, what happened?" He held up the first paper. The headline was devastating. "Tech magnate in love scandal with tax fraud suspect." The cover photo showed Sophia and Dominic leaving a restaurant 3 days before, but the angle suggested much greater intimacy than there actually was. The second paper was even worse. The betrayed bride who seduced the millionaire best man. This one featured a photo of Sophia on her cancelled wedding day, side by side with a recent image of her at Dominic's mansion. But it was the third paper that made Sophia collapse into a chair. Exclusive documents. How Sophia Carter used charm to escape prison. The article featured copies of contracts with her signature, bank statements, and even transcripts of supposed phone conversations where she agreed to money laundering schemes. "This is all fabricated," she whispered, but her voice sounded weak even to her own ears. "I know," Dominic said, but there was something different in his tone. "But it doesn't matter. The damage is done." Dominic's phone didn't stop ringing all morning. Furious shareholders, worried business partners, journalists seeking statements. The company he had taken 2 decades to build was crumbling in real time. "Mr. Albright," his secretary spoke through the intercom, her voice tense. "Your mother is here, and she's brought lawyers." Eleanor Albright stormed into the office like a hurricane, followed by 3 men in suits. "Dominic, this has to stop. Now." One of the lawyers addressed Sophia directly. "Miss Carter, on behalf of the Albright family, I'm serving you with a cease and desist notice from any contact with Dominic Albright, as well as a temporary restraining order." Sophia took the papers with trembling hands. "Restraining order? Based on the allegation that you are blackmailing my client," the lawyer continued coldly, "and also on the evidence of your financial crimes, which compromise the safety and reputation of my client." "This is ridiculous," Dominic exploded. "Sophia is the victim here. Not according to these documents," said Eleanor, throwing a folder on the table. "Documents that show she knew exactly what Brandon was doing, and that you, my dear son, have been manipulated from day one." Sophia opened the folder and felt the world collapse around her. There were copies of emails with her email address, supposedly sent to Brandon during their relationship, discussing details of the financial schemes. There were records of calls from her phone to offshore numbers. There were even photos of her entering an accounting office that, according to the documents, was the center of illegal operations. "I've never been to this place," she said, pointing to the photos. "I never sent these emails." But even as she spoke, a seed of doubt began to form in her mind, and in the last few weeks, there had been moments when she didn't clearly remember all the places she had been, all the things she had. "Signed, Sophia." Dominic's voice was strangely controlled. "I need you to tell me the truth. Did you know anything about Brandon's business?" The question was like a slap. Sophia looked at the man she loved and saw something she had never seen before. In his eyes, doubt. "How can you ask me that?" she whispered, "after everything we've been through together?" "Because I need to know," he replied, and his voice sounded distant. "My company is collapsing. Thousands of jobs are at risk. I need facts, not emotions." The words hit Sophia like bullets. She saw Eleanor smile discreetly, satisfied to see rationality win over emotion in her son. "All right," said Sophia, rising, with a dignity she didn't know she possessed. "If you need to ask, then you already have your answer." She headed to the door, but Eleanor intercepted her. "Where do you think you're going?" "Away from here," Sophia replied. "Away from you." "Not so fast," said one of the lawyers. "You still need to answer some questions about these documents." "The only questions I'll answer are for the police when they come looking for me with a formal accusation," Sophia retorted. "Until then, You can keep your papers and your suspicions." Dominic watched Sophia leave his office and felt as if he were watching Isabel die again. But this time, it was he himself who was pushing the woman he loved away. "You did the right thing," said Eleanor, placing her hand on his shoulder. "She was using you, Dominic. It's better to find out now." But Dominic didn't answer. He was looking out the window, watching Sophia carry her small suitcase to a taxi. Even from a distance, he could see that she was crying. Sophia, inside the taxi, gave the address of the warehouse where Brandon had arranged the meeting. She saw no other choice. If she was going to be accused of his crimes anyway, at least she could try to protect Dominic by signing the papers that would remove his name from any involvement. When she arrived at the abandoned warehouse, she found Brandon waiting with a folder of documents and a triumphant smile. "I knew you'd come," he said. "You were always too predictable, Sophia." "Where are the papers?" she asked. Without the energy to exchange insults, Brandon opened the folder and pointed to several sheets. "Sign here, here, and here. You're transferring all your shares of the shell companies to me. That way, when the investigation moves forward, you'll come out clean." Sophia took the pen but hesitated. "How do I know you'll keep your word about leaving Dominic alone?" "Because," said Brandon, "Dominic has already distanced himself from you on his own. My work is already done." The words were like salt on an open wound. Sophia signed the papers one by one, each signature seeming to seal her fate a little more. When she finished, Brandon carefully put everything away. "Ready? Now you disappear forever. Change cities, change your name if necessary, and never contact Dominic Albright again. And if I don't do that, then the next documents that appear will show that you planned all this from the beginning, that you seduced Dominic deliberately to gain access to his accounts. And then, my dear Sophia, there won't be a taxi that can take you far enough away." When Sophia left the warehouse, she knew that her life as she had known it was over. She had lost the man she loved, her reputation, and now even her identity. She didn't know that, at that very moment, Dominic was in his mansion, looking at an envelope that had just arrived by special delivery. An envelope that contained photographs of Sophia entering the warehouse, accompanied by a simple note. She chose the money. It was always about the money. Dominic crumpled the note, feeling his heart shatter for good. For the second time in his life, he had lost the woman he loved, but this time it seemed that the loss had been a deliberate betrayal. Neither knew they were being watched by people who had orchestrated every move of that tragedy, and that the real game was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since Sophia disappeared from Dominic's life. She had taken refuge in a small boarding house in Poughkeepsie, New York, using the little money she had saved for emergencies. She spent the first few days in shock, alternating between tears of grief and moments of rage at the injustice of it all. But Sophia Carter was not one to give up easily. On the 10th day of her self-imposed exile, something changed. She was flipping through a local newspaper when she saw a small item about Brandon being promoted to senior partner in his law firm. A strangely rapid promotion for someone who had caused such a recent scandal. How did he get away with everything so easily, she muttered to herself, and it was at that moment that she realized she had been a pawn in a much larger game than she had imagined. Sophia began her investigation meticulously. Using the computers at the public library, she created fake accounts to access social media and research information about everyone involved in her downfall. What she discovered chilled her to the bone. Eleanor Albright had met with Senator Vanderbilt 2 weeks before the cancelled wedding. Adriana Vanderbilt had traveled to the Cayman Islands during the same period that the suspicious financial transfers occurred, and Brandon had received a promotion subsidized by a foundation linked to the senator's political group. They planned everything, whispered Sophia, printing documents at a small print shop in the neighborhood. From the beginning. Determined to find concrete evidence, Sophia decided to seek out the only person who might have inside information. Emily, her sister, who had disappeared shortly after the scandal at the church. She found Emily in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, visibly shaken and thinner than Sophia remembered. When she opened the door and saw her sister, Emily burst into tears. "Sophia, I thought you'd hate me forever." "I should," replied Sophia, entering the messy apartment. "But I need the truth, Emily, the whole truth." Between sobs and fragmented confessions, the real story began to emerge. Emily had not betrayed Sophia out of malice or desire for Brandon. She had been blackmailed. "They had photos of me," explained Emily, wiping her swollen eyes. "Photos of when I was using drugs, in compromising situations. They said that if I didn't help separate you and Brandon, they'd show everything to Mom and Dad, and to the principal of the school where I teach." "Who had those photos?" asked Sophia, although she already suspected the answer. "A man who worked for Eleanor Albright. He said that you two were obstacles to the family's plans." Emily paused, taking a deep breath. "Sophia, they didn't just want to separate you from Brandon. They wanted to use you to get to Dominic." The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place in Sophia's mind. "What do you mean?" "The plan was that you would marry Brandon and then, when you discovered his deceptions, seek help from someone powerful. Someone like Dominic, who was known for his sense of justice." Emily wiped her face with a towel. "They knew that Dominic would feel obliged to help you, and when you got close, they'd use that to blackmail him into marrying Adriana Vanderbilt." Sophia felt a cold fury grow in her chest. "So I was used from the beginning. Brandon never really loved me." "No," confirmed Emily, "and there's more. After you disappeared, Brandon was promoted and received an apartment as a gift from the Vanderbilt family. Adriana and Dominic announced their engagement last week." The news hit Sophia like a punch to the stomach, but it also ignited an iron determination that she didn't know she possessed. "Where are those photos they used to blackmail you?" "Destroyed, as far as I know. But Sophia..." Emily hesitated. "There's one person who can help you. Someone who knows all the dirty secrets of this family." "Who?" "Isabel Santos, Dominic's ex-fiancée." Sophia frowned. "Didn't she die in an accident?" "She didn't die at all. She faked her own death to escape the Albright family's threats. I ran into her by chance last week, working as a nurse at a clinic upstate. She uses another name, but it's her." Sophia felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. If Isabel was alive, she might have information that could expose the whole conspiracy. But it also meant that Dominic had been deceived about her death, and that maybe he still loved her. The next day, Sophia traveled to Albany, New York, where she found Isabel working at a rehab clinic. The woman Dominic had loved was shorter than Sophia expected, with dark brown hair and gentle eyes that hardened when Sophia introduced herself. "So you're the new victim of the Albrights," said Isabel, leading Sophia to a cafe near the clinic. "I thought that after what they did to me, they wouldn't dare repeat the scheme." "Tell me what happened," asked Sophia. "Everything." Isabel sighed, stirring her coffee with nervous movements. 5 years ago, I was engaged to Dominic, really in love, like you. But Eleanor discovered that my family had debts with dangerous loan sharks, debts that I didn't even know existed. And she used that against you? Worse, she paid off the debts and then said that my family was under the protection of the Albright family. If I didn't break off the engagement and disappear from Dominic's life, accidents could happen to my parents and siblings. Isabel paused. She said that Dominic was too important to marry someone from a lower social class. Sophia felt her blood boil. And the car accident. Staged. A friend of mine who worked as a stuntman helped me. We exchanged the body's identity with a homeless person who had died in the hospital. Cruel, I know, but it was the only way to protect my family and make Eleanor believe that I had disappeared forever. Dominic suffered a lot from your death, Sophia said softly. I know, replied Isabel, her eyes watering, and I hate it. But I couldn't go back. Even today, my family receives a monthly allowance from the Albrights. It's the price of my silence. Sophia leaned forward. Isabel, they're doing the same thing to me. An envelope that contained photographs of Sophia entering the warehouse, accompanied by a simple note. She chose the money. It was always about the money. Dominic crumpled the note, feeling his heart shatter for good. For the second time in his life, he had lost the woman he loved. But this time, it seemed that the loss had been a deliberate betrayal. Neither knew they were being watched by people who had orchestrated every move of that tragedy, and that the real game was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since Sophia disappeared from Dominic's life. She had taken refuge in a small boarding house in Poughkeepsie, using the little money she had saved for emergencies. She spent the first few days in shock, alternating between tears of grief and moments of rage at the injustice of it all. But Sophia Carter was not one to give up easily. On the 10th day of her self-imposed exile, something changed. She was flipping through a local newspaper when she saw a small item about Brandon being promoted to senior partner in his law firm. A strangely rapid promotion for someone who had caused such a recent scandal. How did he get away with everything so easily? She muttered to herself. And it was at that moment that she realized she had been a pawn in a much larger game than she had imagined. That night, 2 women who had been victims of the same family began to plan a revenge that would change everything. They didn't know that at the same time, a few miles away, Dominic Albright was in his office, looking at a photo of Sophia and questioning, for the first time since she had left, whether he hadn't made the biggest mistake of his life. Tomorrow's party would be the stage for the revelation of the truth, or for the definitive destruction of everyone involved. The Albright mansion shimmered like a palace on Saturday night, all lit up for the engagement party that would seal the union between 2 of the most powerful families in New York. Distinguished guests arrived in luxury cars, while journalists documented every moment of that event that promised to be the wedding of the year. Dominic was on the 2nd floor, adjusting his tie for the 10th time, when he looked out the window and saw the guests arriving. He should be happy. He was about to marry a beautiful woman from an influential family who would bring immeasurable benefits to his business. But all he felt was a deep emptiness in his chest, a hole that had formed the day Sophia left his life. "You look handsome," said Adriana, entering the room without knocking. She wore a stunning blue dress that cost more than many people earn in a year. "Ready for our special night?" "Ready," he lied, offering her his arm. Downstairs, the party was in full swing. Eleanor circulated among the guests like a queen, receiving congratulations for her excellent choice of daughter-in-law. Senator Vanderbilt spoke about the union of traditional families and the prosperous future that awaited the couple. It was in the middle of this perfect scene that Sophia appeared. She didn't enter through the main door, but descended the internal staircase that led from the library to the main hall. She wore a simple but elegant black dress, the only formal dress she owned, and her hair was tied in a bun that accentuated the determination in her eyes. The first to notice her was a waiter, who dropped his tray of champagne as he recognized the woman who had been in all the newspapers 3 weeks ago. The noise of the breaking glasses made heads turn, and a murmur began to spread through the hall. "Oh my God," someone whispered. "It's Sophia Carter." Dominic was in the middle of a speech when he heard her name. His head turned instinctively to the staircase, and he felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. There she was, descending the steps with a natural elegance that made Adriana look artificial beside her. "What is she doing here?" Eleanor hissed, approaching quickly. Sophia reached the bottom of the stairs and headed directly to the center of the hall, where a microphone had been set up for the speeches. Some security guards began to move towards her, but she spoke before they could reach her. "Good evening," said her voice, amplified by the microphone, echoing throughout the hall. "I apologize for interrupting this beautiful party, but I have some important things to share with everyone present." "Security!" shouted Eleanor, but Sophia continued speaking. "My name is Sophia Carter, and many of you know me from the newspapers as the woman who supposedly defrauded Dominic Albright." She paused, looking directly at him. "I'm here to tell the truth about what really happened." Dominic took a step forward, but something in Sophia's posture made him stop. There was a strength in her that he had never seen before, a determination that demanded respect. "Eleanor Albright," Sophia turned to the matriarch of the family, "please tell your security guards to stop, unless you want me to tell all these journalists about the photos you have stored in your safe." Eleanor paled, but gestured for the guards to stop. "What photos?" "The photos of Isabel Santos's sister being beaten by thugs you hired. The photos you used to blackmail Isabel into faking her own death 5 years ago." A hush fell over the whole. Dominic felt the world spin around him. "Isabel is dead." "No, Dominic," a new voice echoed through the entrance of the hall. "I'm not." Everyone turned to see a brown-haired woman walking through the hall. Dominic recognized her immediately, despite the 5 years and the change in appearance. "Isabel?" "Hi, Dom," she said softly, reaching Sophia's side. "I'm sorry for everything." Eleanor tried to regain control. "This is ridiculous. You two are obviously working together to expose the truth," Sophia interrupted, pulling a recorder from her pocket. "Like the truth in this recording, made yesterday afternoon?" She pressed play, and Brandon's voice filled the hall. "Of course, it was all planned from the beginning. Eleanor paid me very well to date Sophia and then betray her publicly. The goal was always to use Dominic's compassion against him. The guy is too predictable, always wanted to save everyone." Dominic's blood boiled as he heard the voice of his ex-friend, but the recording continued. "And now that he's engaged to Vanderbilt, the family has access to all the political contracts it wants. Sophia was just a pawn in the game." "And the shell companies?" Sophia's voice on the recording asked. "I set everything up without her knowing. I forged her signature, used stolen documents. She never knew anything." When the recording ended, the silence in the hall was deafening. Journalists began taking photos frantically. Senator Vanderbilt tried to discreetly head for the exit. "Not so fast, Senator," said Sophia, pulling a folder from her arm. "I have here the records of all the financial transfers between your campaign and the shell companies. Election fraud is a federal crime." Adriana looked at her father, then at Dominic, and finally understood that the game had completely changed. "Dad, let's go." "Nobody's going anywhere," said a new voice. A federal police detective entered the hall with a team of officers. "We have arrest warrants for Eleanor Albright, Brandon Miller, and Senator Vanderbilt." Chaos erupted in the hall. Guests ran for the exits, journalists shouted questions, and the security guards no longer knew whom to obey. In the middle of all this confusion, Dominic and Sophia finally stood face to face. "You did it," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "We did it," she corrected. "Isabel was essential, and your housekeeper, Mrs. Rodriguez, helped us get in here tonight." "Sophia," he approached, but hesitated. "I was an idiot. I should have trusted you. You were protecting everything you had built," she said softly. "I understand." "No, He shook his head. I was afraid. Afraid of allowing myself to love you completely and ending up losing you like I lost Isabel. But I ended up losing you anyway because of my fear. Isabel approached them. Dominic, I need to apologize for the 5 years of pain I caused. He looked at his ex-fiancée with affection, but without the desperate passion he once felt. You did what you needed to do to survive. I understand that now. And I want you to be happy, said Isabel, looking at Sophia, with someone who deserves you. Sophia felt tears well up in her eyes. Dominic, He didn't let her finish. With all the tenderness in the world, he held her face in his hands and kissed her. It was a kiss of apology, of declaration of love, of promise of the future. When they broke apart, he whispered against her lips, I love you, Sophia. I love your courage, your intelligence, your purity. I love the way you light up any room you enter, and I promise I'll never let fear decide for us again. I love you too, she replied, her tears now of happiness. Even when I thought you had given up on me, I never stopped loving you. 6 months later, in a simple ceremony at the same cathedral where it had all begun, Sophia Carter married Dominic Albright. This time, there were no unpleasant surprises, no betrayals, just two hearts that had found their true home in each other. Isabel was there, already dating a doctor she had met at the clinic, finally free to live her own life. Emily was the maid of honor, redeemed and proud of her sister's courage. And Mrs. Rodriguez cried with emotion as she saw her boss finally happy. During the party, Dominic and Sophia danced under the stars in the garden of the mansion that was now truly theirs. You know, he murmured in her ear, I used to think that destiny was a word for people who didn't have control over their lives. And now, she asked, smiling, now I know that sometimes destiny needs a little help, and that true love is worth any fight. Sophia looked into the blue eyes of the man who had become her reason for living and smiled. Then we're ready for any challenge that comes. We're ready for anything, he confirmed, kissing her again under the starlight. And for the first time in their lives, both knew with absolute certainty that they had found not only love, but the home that their hearts had always sought.